Hi students, this section is solving equations with variables on both sides. So we're just going to get into some examples here fairly quickly, but I first want to mention this first bullet point here. I'd like you to write down, linear equations do not always have one solution. An identity is an equation that is true for all values of the variable. When they talk about an identity, you might see something like this, like 2 equals 2 on each side, they equal each other. So we would say that would be an identity. Or you could say all real numbers. Sometimes too, there will be some linear equations that have no solution, and that would be a situation like, let's say 2 does not equal 4, and that would be a no solution. So you might see some of that in this section. You might also solve for a variable just like what we've been doing, like x equals 1, and the answer to that would be one solution. So let's look at some examples here. Example 1a, you have 6x plus 22 equals negative 3x plus 31. Notice you have the variable on both sides of the equation. So you want to get the variables all on one side, the numbers on the other side. It does not matter if you move this negative 3x to the left or 6x to the right. You just have to be consistent with how you move things around. So for the first one, I'm going to move negative 3x over to the left. So I'm going to add 3x to both sides. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the number by itself over to the right side. So I'll subtract 22 to both sides. Excuse me. 6x plus 3x is going to give me 9x. The 22 cancels on the left, so I'm left with now on the right side 31 minus 22, which gives me 9. I'm solving for x. I'm going to divide both sides by 9. So we get here x equals 1. 9 divided by 9 is 1. And that is my solution. So here this would be a one solution answer. Let's look at B. Here we have 54 minus 12w equals 6w. Notice there's w on both sides. We're solving for w. I'm going to add 12w to both sides. On the left side, it cancels out. My marker's having some glitches there, sorry. So we have here on the left 54 equals 6 plus 12w is going to give me 18w. I'm going to divide 18 to both sides. And 54 divided by 18 is going to give me 3. So 3 equals w. Whoops. And that will be my answer. If you wanted to, you can always go back and check too. I want to mention this. You can always go back and plug in 3 for w to see if 18 times 3 gives me 54, and it does, so that checks out. That is the answer to that solution right there. And that would be a one solution answer as well. Okay, moving on to example number 2. Here we're working with the distributive property. So with that being said, we can distribute the 9 to b, and 9 times negative 4, so 9 times b is 9b. 9 times negative 4 gives me negative 36 minus 7b on the left. For the right side, I can distribute the 5 to each situation in the parentheses. So that's going to be 15 equals 15b minus 10. Again, we're getting the variables on one side, the numbers by themselves on the other. Notice I have a 9b and a negative 7b on the left side, so I can combine those like terms. 9 minus 7 is going to give me 2b. Minus 36 equals 15b minus 10. Now for this one, I'm going to move the 2b over to the right side, and I'm going to move this 10 over to the left. So I'm going to subtract 2b to both sides. And I'm going to add 10 to both sides. So I have negative 26 equals 15b minus 2b, excuse me, gives me 13b. I'm going to divide 13 to both sides. Negative 26 divided by 13 is going to give me negative 2 equals b. Again, you can go ahead and plug negative 2 in for b to make sure the left side and right side equal one another, and they do. And this would be a one solution situation. For b, we have half, and in the parentheses 12n minus 4 equals 14 minus 10n. Now, if we distribute the half, to each situation in the parentheses here, we can do that. Half of 12 is going to give me 6n. Half of 4 gives me 2, so that's a minus 2. So 6n minus 2 equals, sorry, my pen's just acting up here. That's a minus. Let's try this again. Equals 14 minus 10n. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add the 10n to both sides, and I'm going to then move the numbers by themselves over to the right side. So then for here I will add 2 to both sides. So now I have 16n equals 14 plus 2 gives me 16. So 16n equals 16. Whoops. Sorry about that. So I'm going to divide 16 to both sides, and we're going to get n equals 1. And that'll be my answer. So I'm running into some technical issues here with this lesson, but that's okay. Let's go on to the next slide. Now this is where you'll see a non-solution and an identity solution here. Now for example number 3, it says solve the equations below. Here for A you have 4 parenthesis x minus 5 and 4x minus 20. What I'm going to do here is I am going to divide 4 to both sides. You'll see why. Because if I do, instead of using the distributive property, I can use the distributive property, but it'll cancel out my 4's on the left, so I'm left with x minus 5 on the left side. And if I divide 4 divided by 4, that leaves me with x. And if I did negative 20 divided by 4, that would be a minus 5. I would end up with the same answer, x minus 5 on both sides. Notice they're equal on both sides. I'm going to end up with 0 equals 0, and this is an identity situation. Or another way we would say this is all real numbers. Where the left side equals the right side. Now if we look at B here, we have 3x minus 9 equals 3x minus 10. Well, if you subtract 3x to both sides, it's just going to cancel that out. So I'm left with negative 9. Does that equal 10? It does not. So this situation right here for B would be a no solution situation. So that's what it looks like as an identity where the left and right side equal each other. Or if they do not, that would be a non-solution. Or if you do get x equaling a value, that would be one solution. And that's what this section is all about. We'll talk more about it in class.